Hey everybody, welcome to the Facebook live launch for Daisies and Devotion. I'm Josi Kilpack and I am the author, and I'll be answering questions and drawing names for giveaways, and we'll have a grand prize at the end. So a little bit about me. I have been writing now for over 20 years. I have published about 32 novels. I have written in a variety of genres. My earliest works were LDS character based, and then I transitioned kind of women's fiction and romance and romantic suspense, and then I transitioned into more national market with my culinary mysteries, the Sadie Hoffmiller Culinary Mystery Series. Did that for a while. Did a women's fiction series with some good friends, Annette Lyon, Heather Moore, and Julie Wright, the Newport Ladies Book Club, and then transitioned into historical romance, where I have been for the last few years, and it's been really fun. I also write under a pen named Jessica Pack, some mainstream contemporary fiction. So, Daisies and Devotion, here's the cute cover, they did such a good job. Daisies and Devotion is the second book in the Mayfield Family Series, and it is the story about Timothy, who the first book in the series is Promises and Primroses, that came out last fall, and that story is about Peter, the oldest brother, the oldest nephew, I should say, because the story is structured around an uncle who has created marriage inheritances for his nieces and nephews who just don't seem to be kind of getting their stuff together, and he really feels that they need to have solid families. They need to have that kind of purpose in order to put them on the right track, which all of their parents did not have. And so he's created this inheritance, this marriage campaign. And the first book is about Peter and the uncle's journey through that. And then the second book is about Timothy. And it all just kind of came together in the sense of a couple of years ago, I was at a writer's conference, and they had us do some exercises in trying to figure out what the theme of our stories were, our overall theme. And I didn't quite get it at first because I've written such a variety of books, and I wasn't sure how to drill that down to one theme, because I felt like I had books that were all about different things. But as they kind of led us through this exercise and what we did, I realized that one of the themes that seems to run through all of my stories is family. And that comes back to that, and and the highs and the lows and the pros and the cons and the greats and the not so greats parts of family. And so I developed this idea as a series. I had really enjoyed doing the Culinary Mystery Series. It was fun to write a set of books about the same character. It comes with its own challenges, but its own interesting bits. And so I created since I was doing a historical romance, I created a series idea. And I based it around that, about the power of family and the purpose of family, and how it can help drive us towards being our best selves. And so that's kind of where it came from. In Peter's story, Promises and Primroses, Peter is pretty serious, and he's a widower, and he's lived a very good life. He's tried to kind of rise above some of the circumstances of his birth and really be a man of good character. But after losing his wife, he decided that he would never marry again, and that he would just raise his daughters, and that the chances of him being happy again would not come his way. So he's a very serious character. And so the next book, I wanted it to be a little bit different. And so Timothy is, he's the younger brother, and he is just carefree and fun, and he likes everybody, and he gets along with everybody, and he doesn't like to linger on hard things. He doesn't think too much about hard circumstances. He just looks to have fun and have a good time. He's very positive and upbeat. And so this was his story, and making it different enough from Peter's, but also to show how he kind of grows through the process. He was a lot of fun to read. If you're familiar with my other books, he's probably most similar to Lord Fenton, who is my all-time favorite character to write. I loved writing him. And so Timothy has some of those shared similarities as Lord Fenton. So with that, we will go into our first giveaway, which is for a copy of Daisies and Devotion. And so we have some names here, and these are for people who have commented and liked the event. So that's the perk. Next time you guys know, you want to get on there ahead of time. So Becky Nelson, Hooray! And I know Becky, and she's great. So Becky, this is yours. If you will direct message the proper romance page, then they will get your address and everything, and I will sign it before I leave, and they will mail it out to you. So then we have some questions. For those that signed up early, they got to ask some questions, and so I'm going to answer a few of those. So from Tessa S, said, how many books are planned for this series? That's always a great question. With my Sadie Hoffmiller culinary series, that did not start as a series at all. It was a standalone book, and then when we decided that that it really resonated well and that we could do a continuation of it, we expanded it, and it kind of expanded by 2 books at a time until it got up to 12. And so this series, I've written the 3rd book, and that is turned in. And I assume that we'll be doing a 4th book, but I don't know for sure because we don't have all the contracts in place yet. It could be as many as 6 books, but we'll just we'll have to see. Have to see how well it resonates. Series are kind of tricky animals because the first one will always sell more, because there's certain readers who, even 4 or 5 books down the line, they're going to hear that it's a series and they're going to want to start with the very first one. And so they're going to go and read the first one, and then you're just always going to have a certain percentage that's going to kind of drop off. I mean, Harry Potter did it that way. Every series kind of does that way. And so from a business and a writer's perspective, you want to make sure that you're choosing well, because you don't want to continue working on a series if it's not staying at a high enough level to make it profitable. So buy the book and tell everybody to buy the book so that the series does well and we can expand it. But for sure there's one more book because I've written that one. The next question is from Allison S, and she says, will we get to know more about the different cousins in Daisies and Devotion? You get a little bit. So in Daisies and Devotion, one of the tricky details about this series once I got into it is that, so the way the family pedigree works is you have Elliot, and he's the head of the family. He's the Viscount Howardsford, and his siblings are the parents of these nieces and nephews. Elliot did not have a family of his own because he went to India to try and save the family fortunes. And while he was gone, his siblings just made poor decisions, and they didn't do awesome by their own children and by each other. And so the cousins were not raised together. They don't really know each other. They don't really know their aunts and uncles, and that's part of what Elliot is trying to remedy with his wedding campaign. And so while they know of each other, they don't really have relationships. The one exception is Timothy, and then Timothy's cousin Harry. And Harry is the main character in the next book in the series that I finished, which is Rakes and Roses, and I don't have a release date for that yet. But Harry is, just as his title explains, he's a rake. He's a womanizer, he's a gambler, he's a drinker. He's this dissolute guy who just went to London and went nuts. And so Timothy and Harry are very similar in age, and they look quite a bit alike. And so Harry is an aspect of this story mostly in the fact that Timothy is so different than him. But we do get introduced to Harry in this story, so that there's kind of a basis for the next story that comes around. But other than that, we don't really get to see any of the other cousins. We do have him reflect on his sister Timothy, on Timothy's sister Donna, who had a bad marriage and is kind of living in exile now. So that's kind of the introduction that you get. And so which character story is next? I don't know who asked that question, but the next one is Rakes and Roses, and that is about Harry and his journey. And that one is, because in a series you have to make sure every book is kind of different from the other ones, that one is a little bit of a gender swap, in the sense that at that time in Regency England, women's power was very, very low. They didn't have any rights. They didn't have a whole lot of individuality. They were dependent on the men in their lives, their fathers, their brothers, their husbands, in order for them to have a position and a place. And so this story kind of flips that around, where the woman in that story is actually in a position of power. She's the one that has the money. She's the one that has the society placement. And Harry then is put in more of the, I don't know if disadvantage is the right word, but he's put in the lower power situation, and it's kind of how they kind of go through there, and it was really fun. It was fun to kind of turn the societal stuff kind of on its head a little bit and show and show what it was like for a man to then kind of be at the, at the mercy, I suppose, though that sounds rather heinous, of a woman. And the last one we'll do is, where did I get the idea from the series? This is from Cambria V. I hope I said that right. But as I said, I was kind of looking for a series idea that I could do with historical fiction. And Sarah Eden has done her family sagas. Family sagas are a pretty popular way to do a series in the Regency world, and so it kind of made sense to go that route, and that's what I did. So, and it's come together. So each story is a little bit different from the other one, and trying to show a variety of angles on coming to find ourselves and coming to find that right person. So we will do the second giveaway, and this winner will get. Oops, I think I got the wrong one. Yeah. So that one will get both of the books in the series so far. So Promises and Primroses, that's the first one, and then Daisies and Devotion, which is that second one. And we'll draw another name out of here. And that goes to Catherine Robery. So Catherine Robery, you are a winner. And if you will direct message the Proper Romance page, they will get your address and they will send those books out to you, and I'll sign them before I leave here today. And then we're going to do another giveaway for this set, which is the Daisies and Devotion, and then a copy of the wonderful Nancy Allen's arc for The Lady in the Coppergate Tower. So this is Nancy's steampunk series, which is fantastic. She's done a really great job. If you haven't read steampunk, you ought to give it a shot. I had not read much steampunk, but I loved her Beauty and the Clockwork Beast. And this is, I think, her third book in the series. And so you'll get an arc of that, and then you'll get a copy of Daisies and Devotion. So we'll pull another name. Cassidy Pace. So Cassidy Pace, leave a message or send a direct message to the Proper Romance page, and they will get your address for that. So I'm going to do a couple more questions here, and then we're going to go to some of the live questions. So if you've got a question that now is just burning, go ahead and ask it there, and we'll get to it. So the next story is, how do I like to plot my storyline? I am not much of a plotter. In fact, last week I heard a term that I'd never heard before. So in the writing community, we kind of divide ourselves as far as organization towards our writing. Usually we have a plotter or we have a pantser. And a plotter is, they plot it all out. Nancy Allen is a very impressive plotter. She has a whole notebook, and she'll get pictures and maps, and she makes it all cute and takes it with her everywhere. And it's really remarkable, and she spends a lot of time plotting out her stories, so it's very impressive. I'm a wannabe plotter, but I'm not. A pantser is on the other end, and called that because it's kind of a swing by the seat of your pants, and you just kind of go with the story and let it take you wherever it will. And that is more of my natural place. But once you get to a point where you're writing professionally and you're writing at a career level, you can't really be a pantser, because you have to, your publisher needs to know kind of what's coming, and you're submitting on spec, which means they usually buy a synopsis, maybe the synopsis and the first few chapters. And I really found that out in my Sadie Hoffmiller series, because I needed to have an idea of where the story was going to make sure I wasn't telling the same story over and over again. But so last week, I think it was on Twitter, but there's a new term which is called a plantster. So you have your plotter and your pantster, and then in the middle you have your plantster. And I think that's where I fall. I think I am a plantster. I have a basic plan, but I don't invest a great deal of time with it. And part of why I don't plot, I have plotted. I've done very intricate plots for my stories, but I inevitably hit a point where I veer away from it. And I feel, when I've plotted it out, I feel this weird sense of like betrayal to my plot, and I try really hard to stick to it, and then I get very frustrated that I spent so much time on something that didn't work. And so so that's part of why I don't invest a lot of time in plotting, is because I have this fear that it's going to be wasted time and I'm going to end up going a different direction. And so Plot and Stir is a pretty good sense for me. I do write a synopsis for my stories before I start them, and many times I will have like a very basic chapter outline, or maybe break it into 3 or 4 parts and kind of know what each part is going to be. In romance, that's some of that is already done for you, because there is a formula to romance. It's one of the few genres that you pick it up and you already know how it's going to end before you even start it, because it's a romance. That's the end. And so romance kind of has a little bit more defined aspects of how the story goes, but then you have to utilize your creativity to make sure that you're giving a different enough spin to make it interesting and fun and fresh, even though they know the ending. So that gets a little bit tricky, but I do kind of do some basic outlining, but I don't spend much time on it. I will do more as I go into my story. I'll get excited and I'll start writing, and then inevitably I'll hit a point in my story where I don't quite know where to go next. And then I go back and I do some brainstorming, and I use some different methods to kind of help figure it out. For me, my plots are very character-based, and so usually when I get stuck on my story, it's what I need to do is kind of dive into my characters and get to know them a little bit better, to figure out what are they going to do, how are they going to react, because it's their reactions that's going to drive the story forward. And the next question is, what book surprised me the most when I wrote it? From Corby H. Oh, and that the first one, the one on plot and storyline, was Karen T. So thank you for that. So Corby H. What book surprised you the most as I wrote it? I don't know. They all surprised me, because I'm not a plotter, because I don't know my story when I go into it. So I get some big surprises in every story that I write. Yeah, I'm not really sure. This story in Daisies and Devotion, it surprised me. She surprised me. I thought I kind of had her character figured out. I was going to have her be kind of very analytical and kind of practical and things, and have Timothy's kind of love for life kind of take her off guard. But she didn't end up being that way. She ended up being very, very empathetic and very aware of what was going on, and very emotionally based, and still very smart and practical and things like that. But she ended up with a much deeper emotional story than I had expected, which was very fun. It was fun to develop her and to kind of see her turn into this person that I hadn't quite expected for her. And typically in a romance, there's always character growth. Those characters change through the events of the story, but typically one or the other of them has a stronger arc, so they grow more than the other person does. And sometimes you'll have one that doesn't grow a whole lot, and the other person is the one that really goes through the intense changes. And in this story, to me they felt very equal. They both kind of went through quite a bit of growth process in order to kind of learn what they needed to learn to come back together. So are there any questions on the live?
We've had a couple. So okay. Corby wants to know how the covers of your books are designed.
Well, by people much more talented and smarter than me. Shadow Mountain has a fantastic art department, and I don't know exactly what they go through for each cover. I know sometimes they do a photo shoot and they bring in actors and they dress them up and do photos and things. I know Lord Fenton was one of those, and sometimes they get a stock photo that they purchase the rights to. There's websites all over that have stock photos of all different types of things, and by buying a membership you have access to it. So sometimes they use a stock photo, but they always do a just fantastic job. I'm always so impressed by the way that they by the way they use the color and the design, and it's fun. So I'm just going to show the 2 covers of the series. What a good job they've done, because the tones are so similar. The pictures, they kind of have a theme to them. You can tell that they match, and yet it's not so much that you don't have the differentiation. So one of the things I really look forward to in this whole series is as the other books come out and how they will match together. I loved that in the Sadie Hoffmiller books. The way that the covers were just, they were all connected and combined, and they were really, really fun. Is there another one?
Yeah, Anna wants to know, besides Rakes and Roses, is there another book you are working on?
I am working, I just started a new women's fiction, a Jessica Pack novel. And so I just like brand new. I was at Storymakers Writing Conference last week, and I've been struggling to find an idea for about 9 months, and played around with a few and dived into them. And then I've always, through all my writing career, page 40 is like my magic page. Like I bet I have 10 books that I get to page 40 and I'm done. It's not interesting enough. It doesn't carry me through. And so I did that a couple of times, and over these last 9 months I've brainstormed out lots of different things. I've tried to do lots of different research angles, and nothing quite came together. And then I had an idea at the writing conference, and so I've written a few chapters of that, and we'll see where it goes. I'm not to page 40 yet, so I don't know for sure, but I think it's gonna come together. And then I'm brainstorming on the next book in the Mayfield Family Series, which I don't even have a title for yet. And I'm just brainstorming it out because I don't know what our timeline is on it yet. So those are kind of the two things. But it's been a while since I haven't had a story that I'm like in the middle of. So it's kind of a new place to be for me. Let's see, a couple other questions. Oh, okay, so we're going to talk about Candy Cane Caper, you guys, and I didn't even see this until today. I came in and it was here, and I thought, oh my gosh. So this is the cover for Candy Cane Caper. Isn't it cute? So they did something a little different. It's not the same recipe thing, because this is, I call it our Christmas special. And so they did it a little bit different, but I love it. It works really, really well. So this will be out in October, and it was so much fun. So one of the questions, so Dawn G asked, will there be more Sadie and Pete books? I don't know. I have no idea. This kind of was a surprise. Shadow Mountain had asked if I would write a Christmas novella for next year, and this was about a year ago that they'd asked me about it. And I said, yeah, absolutely. And I immediately thought it would be like a historical romance, because that's what I've been doing. We haven't done Sadie it's been 5 years since we've done a Sadie book. And so I assumed that we do a historical romance, but then a good friend of mine, Jennifer Moore, she writes for Covenant. Her first book was Becoming Lady Lockwood, and she writes historical romance, does a fantastic job. She's a very good friend of mine. And she has been saying, ever since she first learned that I was bringing the Sadie Hoffmiller series to an end, that I should do a Christmas book. And I said, yeah, that's a nice idea. I just don't know if that'll ever work. And then we ended the series, and so I stopped thinking about it. And but when they asked me to do a Christmas novella, I just her idea came back to me, and I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and ask them and see, because I get asked all the time if I'll be doing more Sadie books. People really enjoyed that series, and I did too. And so so I asked Shadow Mountain what they thought of doing that, and they loved the idea. And then they asked me and then I submitted my proposal for the story, because it is a Christmas story, so we don't want too much blood and carnage. And so I submitted my idea. They liked it. They helped kind of give me some additional ideas to kind of flesh it out, and then they said that they would like it to be novel length, and so that was really fun. That was a fun project to go back to, and it follows the timeline. So in the story, it's been 5 years since Sadie stopped her mystery campaign. She and Pete are living in Fort Collins, Colorado, and living a nice, quiet, mostly retired life. And so, so I don't know. I can't think of another Sadie book that I would do, but I didn't really think about this one until the opportunity kind of presented itself. So we'll kind of see. And let's see. Is there any other live ones? I've got a couple more here.
If you want to answer some.
Okay, I'll do these ones. Okay, so, what was it? Carol? I'm sorry, Caryllk. Carol, I think it's Carol. It's cool. It's cool spelling. So she said, what author, living or not, would you want to have dinner with, and why? And I actually read this a few minutes ago, and I keep thinking about it, and I don't know. I think I'd be so nervous. I don't know. I'm really not quite I'm not quite sure. I think it would be really fun to have dinner with Harriet Beecher Stowe. I wrote a story about her love story, All That Makes Life Bright, a few years ago, and found her really remarkable and very much ahead of her time, and very brave in the things that she wrote at the time that she wrote them. So I would probably go with that. If it's living, I would love to have dinner with Leanne Moriarty. She's in Australia, so I want to go to Australia and have dinner with her there. But I love her stuff. And then next one, so Heidi R. asked, what's your favorite flower and will it be featured in a book title in the series? Lo and behold, my favorite flower is a daisy. I love daisies. I think they are just beautiful and simple, and they bloom a long time when you grow them in your garden. And so it was really fun to put that in this story. So I really like that. And part of why I chose Daisy for this story is that Marianne is an heiress. And so you'd think of kind of fancier flowers with her, but Timothy doesn't have money, and so when he starts having to apologize to her for being a doofus, he sends her bouquets of daisies, and she loves daisies. They remind her of her mother, and so it was fun to kind of put that in there as kind of that symbolism of how much I think we all crave simplicity, and to me daisies are kind of a simple flower, but they go with everything. So that's my favorite one. And then Rachel P. asked, what is something you've wanted to do but never done? I'm not sure what that one is either. My favorite place to be is my home. I do like to travel. I was able to travel to Scotland a couple years ago. Oh, okay, I've got an answer. Here's my dream. So my youngest child is a junior in high school, so she'll be a senior next year. And after that, I will have all my children will be adults and grown and independent. And so my dream is that once we reach that point, I would love to, for 1 month out of every year, live somewhere else. I'm not brave enough to go to like a foreign country that speaks a foreign language, so I only want English-speaking countries, but there's a lot of them. But it would be super fun to live in New Zealand for a month, or live in Scotland for a month, or live in Charleston, South Carolina for a month, or Key West, Florida for a month. And my idea is that I'll go for the first week, my family will come with me, and we'll travel and we'll go see stuff, and then they can all go home, and I'll just live there, and I'll learn what the local coffee shop is, and I'll take walks, and I'll read their newspapers, and I'll just kind of invest myself in that place in a very normal way. That sounds so fun to me. So that's my dream. We'll see if it happens. But that's my dream. It has been fun as my kids have gotten older, and I've been able to travel a bit more specifically related to my writing, and to go and see the different places that I'm writing about. Many of my books and many of my culinary mystery books were all based on Frommer's Guide to Boston, or whatever that is, whatever travel guide I could pick up. And while those are very helpful, it's so fun to go to the place where the story is set. So I've really enjoyed that. Are there any more live questions?
I can't remember her name. Oh yeah, Tessa asked another question. Okay. She wanted to know if you were going to write another historical proper romance.
So I will be. So Rakes and Roses. Oh, sorry, I know what you mean. You're talking about
like Lady of the Lakes.
Yes, you're talking about. Good job. You used the right verbiage, and I misunderstood you. Yeah. So Regency Romance is a romance novel that's set in the Regency time period, but it's pretty general. Like, I don't get into the stuff that Parliament's doing or the actual people. It's about a fictional circumstance. Historical romance is when it's based on either an actual person or an actual event. And so so I don't have any plans for them at this point. I have a couple of ideas, but I think because we're in the middle of the Mayfield series and things, then we're kind of keeping that on the edges for now. So I hope that I'll be able to. They have been a lot of fun. They've been really great for me personally because it was such a challenge for me. It was such a stretch. Every book is a stretch and a challenge in one way or another, but but these books really pushed me. I really learned a lot through the writing process, and it's been, and there's something so rewarding about people when they've read it and said, oh my gosh, this was so much fun to learn this part of Sir Walter Scott's life, or I didn't really even know who Harriet Beecher Stowe was, and now I just, I've opened their eyes to something new, and it's been really, really fun. So I've really enjoyed that. So hopefully we'll get another chance. We will see. But thank you guys so much for being here. We're going to do a grand prize drawing, and then bring this to a close. But so the grand prize is 4 books. So you get a copy of Candy Cane Caper. You get a copy of Daisies and Devotion. You get an ARC of Sarah Eden's new book, The Lady and the Highwayman, which looks awesome, and I love that cover. And an ARC of Nancy Allen's Lady in the Coppergate Tower. So this is awesome. This is like a whole weekend worth of reading. You can just read all weekend long. So you get those 4 books, and they will be mailed to you, and we will go ahead and draw a name. And it goes to Sandra Meaders, Meaders. So Sandra, congratulations. You are the grand prize winner. If you will make sure to direct message the Proper Romance page to get the address, and saying to all of the winners, please message them, give them your address so that they can get this shipped out to you. And Daisies and Devotion is in stores now. I hope that you love it. If you do, please put a review on DeseretBook.com and Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. Those reviews are really priceless to us. It counts as kind of word of mouth advertising, and I would sure appreciate it. If you read Promises and Primroses and enjoyed that, please do the same. It makes a huge difference in the sales of our books, and that is why I'm able to write, because of you guys, and I so appreciate your support, and wish you the very best, and hope that you have some great books that you get to get lost in as summer approaches. So thank you so much for being here today, and talk to you later.